Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Brock. Brock's an individual who's a local Oakridge, Oregon resident. I actually had the privilege of chatting with him for a while at my booth during Sasquatch Summerfest, summer of 2024. That was just passed. And it's a privilege to be able to talk to Brock on the actual show and to go over a few things that he's experienced in the area. So, Brock, how's it going tonight, man?
Well, thank you very much, Jeremiah. What a warm introduction. I greatly appreciate that. Yeah, it's going excellent. Just been focused on work since I've seen you last, but been anticipating this interview and looking forward to this conversation.
That's awesome. I hope the fires are okay out there, or are things getting worse?
Yeah, it appears they're just doing mop up on the rest of them, but everything is extinguished. Our temperatures have dropped quite a bit. We had a couple little bits of rain, and it's all even flow now. We're looking forward to spring and a good healthy winter now. So, yes, forest fire season, be gone with you.
That's great. Man, I was thrown right into that, and man, I remember standing at the booth, and there was like the one time, dude, like, I almost lost my voice, and I was like, what's going on? And I look up and you couldn't see the mountains. I was like, oh my goodness. But it was such a fun time. But
absolutely terrible in the past 3 to 5 years here in town. Yeah, when the visibility starts going, it's best to get inside and try to breathe some of that air purifier air. Thanks to Oakridge Air, a lot of us residents are breathing cleaner to these forest fires.
There you go. So what I thought might be an interesting area to start, you had shared with me how you've actually been involved with this Bigfoot subject for quite a long time around Oakridge, going way, way back. I want to say it was back to the 90s, right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, growing up as an Oakridge resident here in town, I've been here since the mid-'80s. Moved from Nebraska, and Dad started a business back in '87. But as a kid growing up in school, we'd always hear stories, and then as I proceeded to be a young adult and kind of disappear away from the Oakridge area and come back, my dad being an avid fly fisherman, he had always had little strange experiences in the woods that he had communicate with me about, and always told me, hey son, keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. He's all the chills and the cold sweats are real in the woods, so you'll get them out of nowhere. I said, okay. So from there it things got interesting in my 20s. If you'd like me to start now, I'll tell you where we all began.
Absolutely, yeah. Go right for it, Brock.
Yeah. So I am about 25 at this time. I'm living in Eugene, about a 45-mile trip to the west from Oakridge, where my father was residing and where I grew up in high school. I'm in Eugene, and I'm working, trying to get my young life started, and working as a furniture salesman, and Dad and I still communicate on the weekends. And he invited me up one summer weekend and told me he'd like to show me something he found fly fishing up Salmon Creek just outside of Oakridge. And I said, well, sure, Dad, I'll grab my fly rod and we'll plan a camping trip and we'll go make an adventure of this. So after his initial telling me about this thing he wanted to show me in the woods, I was kind of growing with anticipation. What is this? I remember having to call him after he had told me he had something to show me. And he revealed that he had really found a large, what he believed to be a footprint in an old rotted log. And it was way down by a creek, about a mile away from any road. And he wanted to walk me down there and show me this footprint, but didn't want to walk down there all for that reason. There's good fish in this little creek. And so he was, bring your fly rod and a tent and let's make a weekend out of it sort of situation. So that's exactly what we planned for. I spoke with him again and mentioned bringing plaster of Paris or Fix-All, something to try to capture this print that he had captured in this rotted log. So I went to the hardware store and got a box of that green Fix-All, whatever it was, white powder mix in a green box, and we proceeded to make plans for this camping trip. And when we finally arrived, I had what was that, an 8mm digital camcorder, and I'm recording, starting this journey with my dad and I, just trying to make some memories. So I fire up the camcorder and say, yep, here we go. We're gonna walk down. We had those big framed metal backpacks on. I think each of us had 65 to 70 pounds on, with all of our gear and fly rods and whatnot, and of course all the other supplies and whatnot. So we proceed down to the creek, and probably 100 yards into the trail, after I fire up the camcorder, we stumble on three suspicious footprints, all measuring 18.5 to 19 inches long, up to 6 inches wide in areas on the footprints, all separated by like a 6.5-foot stride. And the first set of footprints we stumble on was three. It was a left, right, and a left footprint. And it was going down rather a steep ravine right by a large tree. I recall, as we very first stumbled across these prints, thought, well, if I was a massive creature creating these large footprints, I would have reached up and grabbed this tree branch. And I had the camcorder rolling at this point as I'm speaking, saying these words, and I pan the camera up to about a 6-inch mossy branch, 10 foot in elevation. It was way over my head, and had about a 4-inch layer of moss on it, and it was all depressed in what appeared to be like a handprint in the moss. I was pretty impressed having it on camera, and we were all tickled and just having a good time. We were trying to put something down next to the footprints that we saw to show scale. And I remember my dad, he did have a pistol on him, but he was afraid of pulling out the pistol, putting it down by the footprints in case we were being watched by something we didn't understand, not wanting to irritate it. So remember Dad saying, "No, I'll keep my pistol holstered, and we'll just lay down a fly rod for scale." And and so we did snap a couple stills, and I had the camera rolling the whole time. And so after we pour these three footprints and get them put away in little white plastic bags that we had, um, that, and I think we had stumbled across some old beer cartons or something off the edge of the road that we had walked back up and got to wrap around these casts after we had poured them. But we had proceeded down to the river, which was, I want to say about a 3/4 of a mile from the first three prints that we had found. We had finished hiking down to the creek, and we found the edge of this creek, and we set up camp. And I remember a lot of large, tall grass around our tent when we set up camp. And we tried not to, flatten it all out. We didn't, as far as tall grass goes, that time of year, we were pretty concerned with ticks. So we were trying to stay out of it and just kind of keep to our little campsite. So as we set up camp before nighttime, I recall wanting to fish downstream before it came a little too dark. I remember peeking downstream, and I saw a large log crossing what appeared to be a pool that might have some rather decent fish to catch. So I proceeded downstream a few yards, 50 to 75 yards, I'm thinking, and I jump up on this log, and I catch a whiff of something that smells like a city dump, just a total odd smell that you shouldn't smell in an area that deep in the forest. I mean, we weren't close to any humans, any other humans that we knew of. I mean, this was really a very remote area. So as I jump up on the log, I start walking toward the center of it, and the smell gets stronger and stronger. And it really just appears that the smell that I'm smelling is just coming right from the very center of the log. And I look down, and it appears that something's either been poured on the log. I kind of kneel down where it looked like something had been poured on the log, and that's where the smell had been coming from. And I got to thinking, well, if being a just hearing stories of Sasquatch feces and urine, I've heard of this odd smell with Sasquatch. It smells like a city dump to some people who have explained it. And that's all that was across my mind is, well, maybe the creature stood out on this log and took a leak, and that's why I'm smelling this. So, anyways, I had all that on camera, and I was headed back to jump off of the log when I looked down at the at the upstream side of the log. There is a mud hole that has two small, what appears to be like a youth size 6 or 7 shoe barefoot print in the mud, but it is wet, sloppy, sticky mud. And yeah, I had the camera zoom up on these prints, and yeah, it was rather impressive. I couldn't pour them. That mud was just so horrible that my lack of experience, I was thinking, no, I just can't capture this. At least I had it on video camera, is what I'm thinking at this point. At least I've caught all this on camera. And I'm pretty shocked because I'm thinking, wow, we've seen all this weird stuff, and we're not even to this rotted log Dad wanted to show me on the whole trip. So, I proceed back to camp, tell my dad about what I experienced upstream. He thought it was pretty cool. We fire up the campfire and proceed to sleep. And he passes out, and I, I felt like I was kept up all night by old old men in their 70s grumbling just off in the distances that you couldn't make out any words is what they were saying, but they were just grumbling. And was interesting to wake in the morning to find all that tall grass around our campsite flattened. And Dad and I were both pretty interested to that fact, although he slept through all the noises I heard. I just remember giggling it off with him. He's like, well, it's probably likely, he said. He's all like, well, let's continue fishing and go downstream, and I'll show you that rotted log where I found that footprint, he said. So as the day proceeded, we packed up camp and started to go downstream a few hundred yards to where he had found this footprint. Well, after we packed up our camp and we proceeded downstream, we crossed part of the river that led to a bit of an island in the middle of the river. The river had a bit of a split that had a stand of what I would say were alder trees going in a straight line, almost a very elongated egg shape downstream, where the river finally joined back into a single stream at the end of this island. Well, as we had crossed the river and gotten out onto this island, we noticed something peculiar about the trees on this island of rocks. There was a bit of corridor, like something had broken all of the branches in a perfect U in a straight line, so something could pass through without rubbing or breaking branches. Well, as I'm videotaping all of this, we take a few steps onto this island, and I look down, and there we find 3 more consecutive prints, a left, right, and a left, all again 18.5 inch to 19 inch in length, separated by about a 6.5 foot stride. Again, I had the camera rolling. I had all of this evidence on camera. Just totally baffled. Again, I dropped my backpack, cracked open the box of Fix All, mixed up some water, and pulled out my plastic bowl and poured 3 more prints. And yeah, by this time we let those prints set and dry, and Dad and I maintained fishing throughout the day, and we never heard anything and never had that being watched feeling, but we sure had our eyes peeled to the ground. I mean, we were pretty fascinated as to what was causing these huge footprints, but it was rather obvious what was. It's just hard to hard to put anything else on it. Like hard to blame it on anything else but a 2-footed hominid walking through the forest that's rather tall and larger than any other person. Anyhow, so we pick up these 3 prints on this island and proceed to the one footprint that Dad wants to finally show me. We think we're at the Holy Grail. When we come across it, the footprint is so dilapidated and pathetic, it is not even really worthy of a cast at this point. All the prints that we found on the way down to this one single print he wanted to show me what were by far more impressive. I mean, hard to explain verbally. It just the one he showed us looked like it could have really been faked. It had been rained on, dilapidated. I think something else might have stepped on it. Just very unimpressive. But we poured it anyways. We called it a day, and we ended up hiking out of the place rather excited at our finds. Although we didn't have, any visuals and didn't have any sightings, it did have some nice footprint evidence and some odd smell testimonial, and had a great video to share with people that we had experienced. And yeah, that pretty much summarizes my Salmon Creek experience with my father. And I'll date this and taking place all back in 1997.
It's an incredible account, especially since you were able to have a video camera there and to have the footage. You were able to capture the footage and also multiple track cast.
Yeah.
I remember half of what the answer is going to be from the booth, but what happened to the footage and the track cast that you took that day?
Well, my father still has possession of the tracks and the casts, and he's a local businessman, and he still lives here locally in Oakridge, and he happily shares the sightings of these casts with anybody who inquires them coming into his business. The video that I had taken was so compelling to my father that he told one of his other local friends, who happened to be another local business owner. They actually owned a local video store here in town, and which that video store is now, since video rentals are obsolete, and they still have my video. It's quite an unfortunate incident as to what happened, but my father befriended the owner, about his similar age, in his 70s. Actually passed away in possession of my video, and his wife still has it but has not found it in her possessions, as he's passed 10 years ago. And they used to have a video store, so I can imagine my 8mm videotape that was in a VHS tape conversion box, whatever that is. Got lost in the mix, but they still have it. Anyhow, before when we recorded it, my father had let watch it and give his 2 cents on what he thought of what we had videotaped, only due to the fact that he was the first resident in Oakridge that ever confided in my father to tell me that he had a sighting of Sasquatch back in the late 80s with his young son at the time, and it was up Salmon Creek in the same direction that we had found the casts. So watched this video. My father had loaned it to him to watch. He had time to make it back to the shop and comment on the video that he had saw, but he did not return the video at the time he came back to comment on what he had saw. And I think that must have been a week or two from that point that he had came in and let us know he had watched it. We received notice that he had passed away. And so, yeah, it's quite a shame. I still hope one day that video resurfaces in her possessions, and maybe I can get it and share it with the society.
It is one of those. It's one of those, man, just unfortunate stories, and I hope it's not done, and maybe it turns around. But it's like one of those curse of Bigfoot stories, right? Like,
it sure seems that way. I must say myself, it sure seems that way. I know that I still have in my possession some still images of the footprints that we had taken while I was rolling the 8mm. We were still able to take some nice still shots with my dad's Kodak digital at the time. So anyhow, yeah, then there's more.
real quick before it gets lost. This is a weird one, but you mentioned that you've heard stories about Sasquatch feces in urine.
Yes.
Do you mind? Are there any in specific you've heard, or it sounded like you were alluding to something?
Just rather large piles, and that if once you come across it, you'll know that you've come across something completely unusual just based on the smell. It smells like something that just does not belong. It's not, and that's exactly how I could best describe what I had smelled. It just didn't belong. It was like something that belonged. It was a smell that belonged in the city, but it was in the middle of the forest, and it smelled like a city dump. But yeah, it was rather interesting.
Okay, yeah, I've never heard that before, so I'm glad I asked. That is extremely interesting.
Yeah. There were a few other stories in the past that I have heard as well. That as far as getting close to Sasquatch, smelling something that does smell like a local dump. I thought that just by saying that it would refresh my mind as to what story that was, but it's not coming to mind.
You never know, right?
Right.
It's worth the shot. But at the end of the day, it's a really cool memory of you being able to spend time with your father, and I mean, not just do Bigfoot stuff, but also do some quality father and son stuff back in the 90s, which it's a really cool story.
Yeah, I think it's totally awesome. Some memories that I'll absolutely treasure forever. I hope my father does the same.
I'm sure he will. Has he? So he's been into the subject for, I would guess, even further back than the 90s.
Yeah. My father is a fun one. Yeah, he's I think he's 77 this year, and he's had far more experiences in the woods than I could ever account. He has a lot of I think he's very intuitive, and so he can be really deep in the forest and not be bothered for a day or two and just be camping and enjoying himself doing either gold prospecting or just hiking. But every once in a while, he has these stories and accounts like he's being watched and the hair literally stands up on the back of his neck, and he'll try to walk and shake it off, but sometimes he feels like totally unwelcome and like out of place. And those are instances. I've had a couple of those with him. One of those was at Windfall Lake. It was another late 90s incident when he had invited me to go on a fishing expedition down to a very remote pond at a well-known brook trout creek. So we're hoping to find some really good sized fish in this pond that we had hiked down into the bowl of. It must be 700-800 foot in elevation drop from where you park your vehicle up the top, and you have to walk down to this lake / pond at the bottom of this ravine. A bit of a stacked trail, you have to tic-tac back and forth. There's really no trail getting there, but we followed some game trails, I would say, getting down to the lake. But we get down there and dad heads to the where the pond is actually turning into a river and trickling down the ravine, and I'm on the opposite side of the pond. And we're both within eye distance, and we're casting our fly rods, trying to raise a fish and get a bite. And we had raised a couple fish, and nobody had landed anything, to where all of a sudden, must have been fishing 5-10 minutes, and we heard, I my memory, I hope, serves me right, but I believe that we heard rock knocking first. The rock knocking started clack, 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 like series of 3 clacks, and this sounded maybe 150, maybe 200 yards away, way down in the trees, kind of on my dad's side of the on the dad's side of the pond, where the water was actually exiting the pond, rolling downhill. It sounded like the knocks were coming from that downhill side. Dad and I both made eye contact across the pond with each other, and we're kind of making hand gestures, putting our hands by our ear, like, "Did you hear that?" We paused for a little while, and nothing happened, so we continued casting our fly rods, and then we heard tree knocking, and it sounded like it was getting closer, like a large wooden stick smacking the base of an old growth tree, just echoing through the forest. But again, this happened in a series of 3 knocks. Bang, 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 or knock, knock, knock. And Dad and I were looking at each other going, this is kind of crazy. There's really no reason for anyone to be where we're at. It's quite a long drive outside of town. Not only a long walk down into this weird ravine that really, there's nothing down in there but small fish. I mean, it's not like there's a gold mine down there, I don't, it was really just kind of strange. So Dad and I were signaling back with each other after we hear this tree knocking going on, and he's got his hand by his ear, and I've got my hand by my ear, and we both kind of shrug our shoulders at each other, and we hear a low-pitched hum or a whoa. Couldn't even explain what it was, and we both decided, well, I think that's our signal. So I signaled to Dad and started pointing up the hill and gesturing that I was going to walk in his direction and meet him. And he could see me within eyeshot. So as we were both walking toward each other, trying to meet up on the edge of this pond, and we're going to start walking uphill and away from these noises. As we're walking toward each other, we're approaching each other probably 30, 25 feet, 30 feet, somewhere in that area. My dad can clearly see me. I can clearly see him, where I have a rock coming from a tree out, being thrown right by the edge of my head, and it splashes in the water down by the down in the pond. And we just paused. I looked at Dad, and then I think that pause became fear, and we both hightailed it up out of that Windfall Lake area. We were terrified. But that rock, my father saw it come at me, and saw it hit the water. I didn't see it come at me. I heard it whiz by my ear and saw it go off in about a 45-degree angle in front of my face and hit the water, and big splash. Looked behind me, couldn't tell what the hell happened, where it came from. We just, we got out of there. And from that point, there was no incident until we got to the truck, hopped in the truck, and we were out. So, yeah, that had us going pretty good. That was being scared out of somewhere. But yeah, it was no visual. It was really, I kept trying to tell myself, nah, it wasn't a rock. It was just a super, super heavy pine cone. my dad would just laugh, because he was well aware that it was a rock, and so was I. Yeah, it's just really trying to look for other reasons of, being spooked. It's kind of hard to admit that something didn't want you there in the woods and you don't know what that something was. It's yeah, interesting.
That's a definite game changer for sure. So pretty much you're saying that the rock was about the size of a pine cone then.
Yeah, I'm going to say it was fist size. It was
Okay.
rather large. Yeah, it was the size of my fist. Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure that it was a rock. When we didn't see it float away in the water after, and I think pine cones when they fall from trees, I think they float. Yeah, I don't think that they immediately sink. Anyhow, but yeah, one other small experience there was the in the same Windfall area. This is going to be around. This is the Packard. I get confused on the Packard Inlet or the Bingham Inlet to Hills Creek Reservoir, and I do believe Windfall is on the Windfall's on the Packard side, and Coal Creek is on the Bingham side. I believe. Don't quote me on it, but I will say that I am confident that we were at Windfall Lake, and I am confident that we were in the Coal Creek area when I describe my next little incident or whatever it is you want to call it. There is a rock quarry that has a gold, and I can't say a gold vein, has a quartz vein that we are hoping has gold in this quartz vein. It's in a rock quarry close to Coal Creek. Now, the rock quarry can be accessed from the bottom or top side, but when you access it from the bottom side, you still have to walk uphill to get this quartz vein. And when you park at the top side of the hill, you have to walk a long ways downhill to get to this quartz vein on this quarry, if that makes sense. So, we decided after I had showed my father how to access the bottom side, we decided to plan a trip to access the top side of this quartz vein. And we pulled out a Forest Service map and located a road that was about 3/4 of a mile from this quartz vein, but it just a slight downhill trek right on a ridge, a very exposed ridge. As we start trekking from this place where we parked on this logging road, started trekking down this ridge, it was a well-traveled animal trail on this ridge. Very well-traveled animal trail, and no reason for really anyone to hike there unless they were trying to get to that quartz vein like we were. But again, we saw no human footprints, saw no big footprints on this whole trip. But when we did get to this one particular flat spot on this very visible part of the ridge, we noticed a peculiar tree, one peculiar young tree on this rocky ridge that about approximately 12 feet up in the tree, where the sapling was 6 to 7 inches in diameter, had actually been twisted off, cleanly twisted off, and the very tippy top of that tree was laying flat on the ground right by the base of the tree. We started poking around the area, just looking, going, what the hell could have caused this? This is so unusual. And as my dad was looking at the evergreen parts on that tree, we started noticing that there is this perfect looking half moon bite mark out of the evergreen on this branch. And it'd have to be a huge creature like twice the size of a silverback gorilla to be taking this size of a bite out of this, what we're seeing on this evergreen. So Dad takes a couple snapshots and we proceed to the quartz vein and we get what we want, and I show him what we want around this quartz vein. And on our way out, Dad says, I'm going to take that branch home and look closer at it. And he picks up the branch and he wraps it up in a piece of nylon that he had in his backpack, and we proceed up to the truck. We get to the truck and we load up the branch and get home. And as he gets home and unravels this branch, he notices 2 or 3 hairs, just strange looking hairs on this branch. So he pulls these off and puts them in a vial. And since we've had some weird Sasquatch experiences in the past, now he's become a bit of a Sasquatch buff, and he's got a little bit of a Sasquatch library starting when it comes to, documentaries and books and other educational materials. And yeah, he has this one book that talks about, unidentified species hair identification. You can definitely identify an unidentified species hair by the lack of that center core of the hair. The name's not coming to me. It's called
a medulla.
Medulla. Yeah, missing the medulla.
Yep.
Anyhow, so yeah, he still has those hairs in a test tube somewhere in a shop there right by his footprint casts. And yeah, sitting next to his 7 or 8 books of his Sasquatch library. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, and it's really more for his own entertainment and my amusement. I think to both my father and I, we're not Sasquatch believers by any means. I think we're just Sasquatch knowers. I think that there comes a point where you just know that there's something out there that is unidentified, unexplained. And even though you have people out there all the time that claim to be hunters, they're out there there's different intentions in the woods, in my belief. They're different intentions. And I believe that whatever is out there knows your intentions.
Absolutely.
And I think that is going to be the truth or tell when it comes to the final proof of Sasquatch being revealed. Is it's going to be somebody for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons. There's something with I don't know. I feel like Sasquatch knows more about me than I know about him just when I'm walking through the woods. It's just one of those, it's kind of a weird intuitive feeling. You just kind of know. Yeah. So there are my experiences.
So Brock, I'll tell you real quick, and I've said this a few times on other shows, but especially around Oakridge, I did experience that being in a certain area multiple times, same area with different groups of people. I did notice that certain groups of people, there would be things that would happen, and these people did have completely different intentions. It was very interesting. I think there's something to that. It matters what intention you have when you go out, and if you're in it to, how you care really, or if you're in it just for money, or, different things like that,
Right. I feel like it's kind of weird to say, but I feel like Sasquatch knows if your heart is pure or not, and he'll only mess with you and let you know he's there is if your heart's pure, and he knows that you're not out there to want to hurt him or mess with him, but I think he'll let you know when you've crossed certain thresholds of boundaries in the forest, and you're treading where you shouldn't be treading. I feel like if we would have had a gun in our hand, we would have never had any of those experiences. Although my father packed a pistol when we initially found those first footprints, that was his intention, he didn't even want to pull it out. Put it down next to the footprint in fears that, those intentions might be misunderstood in the forest. And I believe it's that understanding and that care for understanding of what that creature is that will eventually lead to it being discovered.
I really hope so. You mentioned that your father has the around 3 hairs in the vial. How long ago was that again?
This must have been 2003. Right
Okay.
around 2003 is when we found those, and I'm sure they're still there.
I can provide you info about this later, but there is actually a guy with North Carolina State who it's pretty much a free DNA test, and he pretty much anyone can send in whatever they found, and it won't cost you anything, and they'll check it from DNA and stuff.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
If
So
you can.
yeah, his name is Darby Orcutt, and I'll make sure you get the link for that so you can check that out. But
Thank you, Jeremiah. I appreciate that.
absolutely. I remember you also had been talking about some things to do with Summit Lake as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. So as I worked here in town as a fuel attendant for quite some time, there there was more than one occasion. I had one particular Indian that was a Klamath Indian. He was rather obnoxious and come through the gas station, and he was talking about a fishing experience that he was going to have up at Summit Lake on the weekend, and he had seen my vehicle with a Sasquatch sticker in the window, and he had made a funny comment on it. And I asked him, I said, well, have you had any experiences with the big guy in the woods? And he proceeded to tell me a story about a family of Sasquatch. Him and a group of his buddies were trying to rile up and have some communication and hollering matches with up around Summit Lake, where he had mentioned several times that Sasquatch was definitely the hide and seek champion, and was awesome at scaring his friends. And I don't know, he was pretty obnoxious about it, but a very serious believer, no doubt. There was more than one occasion that I've heard others speak of their experiences around Summit Lake as well. Having a hard time recalling the clarity of one of those stories right at the time, but yeah, Summit Lake is another hot spot known for having some Sasquatch activity. This thing in the Summit Lake area is that I had a sister come up and visit in 2005, and my father wanted to go show her Summit Lake and asked if I'd like to go for the ride, and I said sure. So we hop in, and it must be fall down here at an elevation of about 1,000 feet. As we leave Oakridge at 1,000 feet, we proceed up to Summit Lake around 4,500 feet. And there's patches of snow on the road, and actually a few snow drifts on the side of the road. And we're just approaching Summit Lake, and there's a little ponds off to the side of the road as you're getting closer to the larger lake. And one of these ponds is called Alpine Lake. And we proceed around one of these dirt road corners, and there's a large snowbank that had very visible, highly visible, clearly defined toes and heel. There were 3 footprints in the snow going into the lake and disappearing into the into the lake, all separated by a 6.5 foot stride. Each one of these prints appeared to be 19, 20 inches big. Yeah, it was pretty impressive. Dad, my sister had come up from California, and Dad and I are talking to her about the possibility of Sasquatch in the woods, and we come around the corner, and my sister's all, "What is that?" My dad says, "Oh, let's get out and check it out." And yeah, that was quite a rememberable experience, something I'll never forget. So yeah, we snapped a couple photos of that, and on we went. But boy, her mind is open up now. Every time she comes up to visit, she's like, "Can we take a drive in the forest to go look for Sasquatch prints?"
That's awesome. I was going to ask if she's into it now. Yeah.
Oh, she loves it. Every gift that my father gets now for birthday or Christmas, all has Sasquatch something. You know, he's got Sasquatch everything in the house now. Pretty much hand towels and toilet paper, dish soap. Yeah, that's the running thing. Is, oh yeah, you want to talk Sasquatch? Come to our house. Dad likes the attention a little bit, but no, it's it's pretty cool to be able to relate with him on that, being father and son and all, and then getting my sister involved. Father, son, and sister all see and believe the same. That's pretty cool.
It's a way to bring the family together too. Something I noticed myself, and going out to Oregon was the first time that I've really, really gotten into the super thick of it. I've done stuff in Iowa before, but Oregon was just a little bit different. And I noticed that when you have like some pretty intense encounters, it really grabs a hold of you, and you're like, man, it would be really cool to go back there, you know? And it kind of gets you. It's interesting.
It does. I think it gets in your bones. It's infectious. It is infectious. I don't know. It makes me have hope that magic is abound. There's so many things about this old world that we don't understand, and know that Sasquatch is just one little part of it. And, you know, may we have more of these type of things in life to experience that just make you scratch your head at the wonder of what an awesome gift life is. Being part of this planet of so much mystery and intrigue. It's pretty cool.
It does give you hope in a way. If this one weird thing can be real, then who knows what else could be real too, you know?
Yeah, very mind-opening.
Yeah.
It can be very mind-opening. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that as well.
Absolutely. Awesome. I got a few random questions for you. I'm just going to throw them out and see if anything comes out of it. Listening to what your stories have been so far, it sounds like as of yet you have not been able to have a visual, correct?
Correct. No visuals.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to double check on that. There was I can't remember if I asked you this at the booth or not, but there was a place that kept coming up with different people that I would talk to. Have you ever heard of anything weird happening around the Spirit Lake area over by Waldo?
I've heard of it through the years, but none of the stories stuck, and nothing came through being really clear. I think the best of my recollection is that an old high school buddy of mine, Eric, him and his father used to run Boy Scouts up to Scout Lake, and he had experiences with a Boy Scout trip back in the early 80s of being screamed at. And that was one of the last times they had ever taken the Boy Scouts to that lake. But they'd been screamed at.
Wow.
I'd have to ask Eric again. He's another local here in town, but he went to high school the same year I did, and his father passed while he was in high school. But his father, when he was in grade school, ran a Boy Scout tribe here in Oakridge, and would take them up to Scout Lake and camp up there and have their little rendezvous there. I could reach out to him sometime and try to get clarification on that. But yeah, I'll have to write that down myself, because you're making me recall more than I thought I'd be able to.
Yeah, and is that the same area as Spirit Lake then?
Spirit Lake is up the 19 road, like after Heidi Scenic Byway, and Summit Lake is more on the backside of Diamond Peak.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So a little bit different area. But up the 19. Spirit Lake, I believe, burned this year in the fire up there.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. We just had a fire up there. What was the name of that fire? Oh, the Chalk Fire. The Chalk Fire up to 19 actually burned even around milepost 10 on that after Heidi Scenic Byway. That was one of my favorite swim holes. But anyhow, yeah. Yes, I will reach out to Eric and try to get more clarification on the Spirit Lake story on his father.
Cool, thank you. It's a weird area. I've had more than a few people tell me they've been run out of Spirit Lake by Sasquatch that had dreadlocks, and the sticks float every night in the the lake, and they like go in a circle and float around every night, and it's just really interesting stuff. Yeah, right. So it's something I'm keeping an eye on. I like to throw it out in episodes just in case someone new is listening and can contact me or put a comment on it.
Sure. I'm going to reach out to him on that.
Spending so much time in Oakridge, have you heard of any other interactions with Bigfoot or any encounters that made you take notice or anything interesting over the years?
Yeah, well, just like Dwayne's experience there, the whole bit. I know his buddy Ronnie up there habituating him with the guitar and doing all that stuff now. He's the only guy that I know that's really messing with him, and he's so about it. He's so about it. It's not even funny. I don't doubt him one iota. He's been a straight shooter with me ever since I've met him over 15 years ago. That I don't question it much. That's why we vibe so well. If we're talking Sasquatch, boy, he lights up like he'd just had a case of Red Bull. He's oh my God.
I mean, I was there. I was with him when he started playing his guitar in the area, and it does get them to respond. Like, we heard vocalizations in the middle of 2 songs. It was wild. So Ronnie's legit. I'd love
to go up there with him. I've got to find a day off work and say, come on, let's go get Ronnie. Let's go mess with Sasquatch and get this on tape.
There you go. We've talked about Bigfoot. Have you ever experienced anything else strange around the woods and outskirts of Oakridge?
Yeah. Just last year, my wife and I, we had a sighting of something. My entire life, I've seen UFOs, like, I don't know, probably 5-6 times in my life. I've seen UFOs, so I've always been a bit of a UFO guy. If a UFO show comes on TV, I'm watching it. I'm totally compelled. Nothing else is on TV but the UFO show. I got to see the latest, greatest, what's new in the world of UFOs, only because I'm so compelled that I've seen some stuff in the sky I can't explain. But last year was epic. My wife and I were on the front porch, and I was just thinking to myself, it would be so awesome if my wife and I could actually see something that we did not understand together and look at each other like, what was that? And about 5 minutes after having this thought cross through my head, we're standing out on our front porch looking up in the sky when we see a total UFO, what I would call a flying lava machine that was completely silent and left a tiny tail as it swooped super low and then rolled right over the mountains at a very low altitude, but went faster than any airplane on a very calm night, almost like it is now. But we both saw it and could clearly explain it. We both had our eyes locked on it for 4 to 5 seconds within our full range of sight. And we're like, what are we looking at? And it was close. I have a ridge sitting here in town that I'm looking at, a ridge right across the way with the rolling mountains. And if I was to throw a ball or throw a rock, it's less than 3/4 of a mile from me. Wow. This object flew lower in the airspace. It flew between my house and the mountain and then proceeded up and over the mountain and shot off to the west in full view. And this little flying lava machine, when my wife and I locked eyes on it, it looked like a flying lava lamp, and you could actually see the orange, floaty lava swimming inside of this thing. But this thing had wings on it too, 2 little tiny white bulbous wings on each side. It was just the strangest thing that either one of us have ever saw. And we just look at each other. My wife can still look at me and go, yeah, we straight up saw a UFO. Wow. We're totally unidentified in yeah, it was so amazing that we had such clear sight of it, and it was so vivid, just still jaw dropping to this day. That one had me, after I saw it, really questioning reality for a couple days. Are we going to see another one of these? Are there like more of them coming? But whatever it was, it's completely silent and fast. And yeah, I can't explain the lava thing. That was weird. Just a bulbous disc with wings, but the bulbous disc on the inside was just lava. It was so nuts. It was bright orange, like glowing from within, putting out light, but yet you could see the lava like crap floating around inside of it. It was nuts.
Yeah, that makes no sense. I mean, I'm not a UFO guy, but like that is just incredible. Like
I've never even seen one. Like, I think I've seen one on a documentary, and I keep looking for that documentary to see where it was that they saw that one. But yeah.
What was the year abouts on that again?
Oh, this was that last year, babe? The year before, last year. So it had been 2023. Yeah.
Okay. Brock, I'm just glad we were able to chat again and get a lot of this stuff documented. And just thank you for coming on the show. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you again. Thank you so much, Brock.
Hey, Jeremiah, thank you so much for calling me. It's been fun to discuss, and yeah, I'm glad finally some of this is out there. It's a little off of my chest. I've always kind of debated over the past year whether I should ever share any of this info with anybody, and I had talks with my dad, and he's all, "No, man, if anybody asks you, feel free to share away." I said, "Okay, will do, Dad. Thanks." So, yeah, I'm glad. Hopefully, you put it to good use, and somebody can find some value in it.
All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Deb Frediani today. She is from the great state of Idaho. She's a listener out there. She's also been referenced in the book Face-to-Face by Tom Cantrell, if you're familiar with that book, which is a very fun read. But Deb, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Fantastic. I reached out to you and I was like, well, this is kind of a long shot. Let's see if she responds. And I'm glad that you did. And I would love it if you would be able to share, what you've experienced out there over the years in Idaho.
Okay. Well, we'll start. I grew up in the West Central Mountains in a rural area and, a logging community here in Idaho. In a small town, less than 2,000 people. 4 generations born and raised in that area. And as a child growing up, my grandpa would always make, statements like, "Don't go into the tree line, don't go into the woods, stay here by the house because there's a wild man out there." And we just thought he was kind of pulling our leg, we really would laugh it off. And, as kids, you didn't take it serious. But I would say probably in 72 is when we started hearing, the strange noises coming out of the trees, the woods, which were, backed up to my grandfather's farm. The horses would get spooked and they would run and jump the fence, and we'd have to chase them all down. And, we really didn't know what it was. Grandpa would say it was probably just a cougar, because we did have a cougar that would frequent the area every now and then, but the sounds were just increasing, it seemed like, getting closer to our home. Well, in 1974, I was 10 years old, riding my bike, and every weekend, it was a Saturday, my cousin and I, who was younger than me, get on our bikes and, take allowance money we earned over the week and go to town, which was probably about a 2 to 3 mile bike ride, which was easy, when we're young. We go to the local little market on the edge of town and get, some kind of ice cream or treats. And we rode our bikes a lot in that area. So we were headed back. It was, I would say, August 2nd of 74. We were headed back from one of our outings in town. And we heard, it was like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was hot out. I remember that. And we were very familiar with all the wildlife, in the area. So we just riding our bikes along, and all of a sudden we hear this high-pitched whistle, which resembled like a elk call, bugle, which we were familiar with, like I say. And we kept riding our bikes, and then it happened like 2 more times, and we pulled off the side of the road to see if we could get a visual on this elk, that we were hearing. So it just struck us odd, because during the heat of the day, they like to sit in the brush and where it's cooler, then they'll come out later when it cools off. So I thought that was real odd. Why would an elk be out this time of day, in one area and remain there for that time period? So like I said, we got off our bikes and we're looking around trying to get a visual on this elk that we were hearing. And then up along the tree line of this meadow that we were riding through, you could see this tall, very bulky figure standing at the edge of the tree line. As it walked slightly leaning forward, with a conical shaped head. And like I said, it was black, very black and bulky. And I couldn't figure out, if that's a bear, they don't walk that far on their hind legs. I was trying to, go through my mind of what I could figure out this was that we were seeing. And nothing was adding up. It just seemed so odd. So it stopped by the pine trees, and I just remember it standing and watching us for the longest time. And by then, my cousin saw it, and she was gone. Well, she was younger than me. She took up on her bike for home. But I was curious, I've always been curious about things. I need to find answers, about things. I wasn't scared. And so I hopped on my bike and I rode a little closer, and it was still there. So, and it was just watching, which made me a little uncomfortable. And I could hear in the back there was apparently more than one, I from what I understand, in the brush. Behind it, I could hear movement, trees crashing and, something big moving around. So let's see, it stopped, and then it turned to its left and walked back into the tree line, pushing away the tree branches away from its face as it walked into the trees. And that's when I knew for sure, that is not a bear. What the heck was this, And that kind of started my journey into Bigfoot land. I've done a lot of research from the time I saw it to, over the years. I went into the medical field, of course, when I got older. That was my job. But I've always had the Bigfoot mentality, the passion for answers, and I want to learn more. So when I retired from the healthcare field, I got back into this, doing my own thing. There's no fancy equipment, no, big team or anything. I prefer to approach the subject in a non-threatening manner, because I found that despite all my years of hiking the mountains of Idaho, you'll never find them. You'll run yourself to death. Just sit somewhere and let them come to you. So that's kind of how I do my research now, is just set up a little cozy environment, with non-threatening music and things that capture their curiosity. They're very curious. And I don't team up with anybody really. My husband goes with me once in a while, but I still follow up on reports in that area, and all through Idaho, actually. So, yeah, that's kind of what started my journey. I've had other experiences, over the years, but after I left, and moved to Phoenix, then, I kind of got out of it. I was trying to get my degree, and, I was a single mom, so I was too busy really for Bigfoot at that time. So anyway.
It's extremely interesting. Deb, do you mind if I ask you some questions about the
right
first part
ahead.
of your life there? Do you mind sharing
Sure.
what logging community that was that you grew up in that area where you had that encounter?
It's in the it's in West Central Mountains. It was a rural area, now a tourist destination. McCall, Idaho.
Okay. Gotcha.
There's a lake in the heart of the town, and there are a lot of reports. That's where I had most of my experiences.
What medical field were you in? I know you're retired from it now, correct?
EMS. I was
EMS.
EMT and nursing. I did that 36 years.
Wow. In that Idaho area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Gotcha.
I did some clinical time down in Phoenix while I was there, which was a whole nother adventure.
So thinking back to the time in 1974, you're around 10 years old. It sounds like at a certain point, there was something that you saw that made you think, okay, this is definitely not a bear. It's definitely a Bigfoot.
Right.
Were there details that you saw like in the face or anything like that really told you, okay, this is what I think it is?
I think it was more the way it moved. It walked, slightly hunched forward, the shape of the head, long arms, and big and bulky. And bears just don't walk on their hind legs for that distance, And what really blew my mind was when it pushed the pine tree boughs out of its way so it walked back into the tree line.
Was there a time when you were able to see the front or side view of the face, or was that a thing where it was kind of sheltered by the pine boughs that it was pushing aside?
Yeah, it was kind of in the shadow of a tree, it was afternoon. And the pine tree boughs were kind of hanging over its head, so I couldn't get the detail of the face, but on the body was huge. I mean.
So you've had many years in the EMS, EMT nursing field, so you learned a lot about human anatomy and the human body.
Yes.
After you got all that knowledge, did you ever think back to what you saw that day and think, oh, wow, what I saw there is totally different, or isn't that interesting what I saw that day, going off of what I know about the human body now?
Oh, yes. I've done extensive research into primates, their anatomy, physiology, and behaviors, like the silverback gorillas. Their There's quite a lot of similarity there.
Would you be able to share any of those interesting observations you had due to your background?
They do, I believe, live in families. I've never seen them together, but reports that I have followed up on, there's been more than one sometime, with a smaller female and maybe a young one. And like their chest beating. I had experienced that once in all my years of, researching this subject. I had it happen once, and it was in the dark and scared the daylights out of me and my family I was with. But they, they're very intelligent creatures, and so are the Bigfoot people. I think of them more as people, sure, like us, than an animal.
So you were out in the woods with your family, and you experienced what you say is a Bigfoot beating his chest at you in the dark?
That's the only way I can describe it. We had gone hunting for the day. We were deer hunting. And we got a deer, and so we were walking back down the logging road to the pickups, and we had our deer attached to us, and we cleaned it, out in the field. And our flashlights were all we had, and it got dark before we got back to our pickups. And everything happened so fast. It was so strange. We heard a stampede coming down off of the hill, along the road we were walking on. And there must have been, I don't know, maybe 20 elk on a full dead run. And this horrible shriek come out of the dark. I didn't know where to put my flashlight because it happened so fast. But we heard this horrible shrieking howl and a chest beating. It's the only thing I can say. And I know it wasn't a pheasant or a bird, because sometimes they'll do that. But no, I could feel it in my chest. The reverberation of the growl or howl and the chest beating, and I was dumbfounded. We were almost run over by a herd of elk. Over the years, I've gone over that in my mind. What was that sound? And I did hear the sound of the silverback, on a show I was watching, a documentary. And that's exactly what it sounded like. And I don't know why, but anyway, that's what I heard. The big scream. It just takes the air out of you. It just, because you could feel the reverberation in your body.
That's incredible. And was that in Idaho as well?
Yes.
And how old were you at that time?
At that time, I was 24 after my first sighting. And then over the years, we had, where they come close to my grandparents' farm. And, we'd find tracks occasionally, and the horses would be spooked. One night, it was so close to the house that Grandpa went out on the porch with his shotgun. And it's the only time I ever saw my grandpa frightened of anything. He was a logger, and his hands were shaking. He's holding that gun on the porch and watching for it to come out of the woods because it was making a lot of noise. And he was trying to be prepared, That's when I think I really realized that he's not pulling our leg. We've got to stay out of the woods over there because we don't know what it is. But my grandpa was frightened that one time. I'll never forget that.
It's something else when you see the adults in your life when you're that young, have fear in their eyes or they don't know what's going on. That is a really life-changing experience. Do you ever remember hearing stories from any neighbors growing up in that area of things they would experience that were strange and potentially Bigfoot related?
Only after my sighting, then the neighbors started to open up, about their experiences. And I thought, wow. So I had contacted through a book I read in the library after my experience, the first one, was Russell Gebhardt in Lewiston. And I told him about everything that was going on. Well, he and another investigator came to my hometown and interviewed everyone about their experiences and mine too.
That's amazing. So they came to your area just because of you reaching out at around just a little bit after age 10. Did they publish any of those sightings in a book or did anything come of
Not
that?
that I know of.
Oh, wow.
Not that I know of. No, I don't know. And unfortunately, he's passed away. But we wrote letters. I received letters from Renee to Hendon over the years. So we were pen pals for a while too. But I would always send them updates, when I heard other reports.
What was that correspondence between you and Renee? Was he curious about what kind of things were happening in the area or?
Yes. What kind of activity, where it was located, anything that was unusual, not common.
Very interesting. That's man, you really did get right into it. And
I did, yeah.
That's awesome.
The day after, I rode my bike to town to the library, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm just going to start reading. And that's how it all started for me.
How did you get Renee's information? Was that just from a book or?
Russell Gebhardt, actually, the investigator from Lewiston, said, I have a friend that I think you should send your information to. So I wrote him a letter, and he wrote me one back.
That's really cool. So over the years, then you mentioned that you were following up on different reports. Were these just people that had come to you because they probably heard that you're the person in the area that was interested in Bigfoot?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't ashamed to let the locals know that I've had this experience, and I put it out there that if anybody else has, to contact me, it would be confidential, because Lord knows people are going to judge you, tell you you're crazy.
That is true, unfortunately.
I don't care. It's God's honest truth, everything I share.
Did you keep a written record of what they would convey to you or anything like that? Or was it just they would share and then you would make a mental note of that?
Oh, no, I documented as best I could as a kid, And then it's kind of stopped when I got into high school because I was trying to, I was trying to figure out my career path and stuff. So, but I was always had my ear to the ground about Bigfoot stories,
That's amazing. Did you ever publish a book or anything like that?
No, I haven't. I just didn't think I needed to. Other than what I shared with Tom,
Sure.
That's all. I just have my own journals and, my experiences. So, writing a book, I don't know.
It's a big thing. Yeah, definitely. But
it is.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to it's not a money-making thing for me, and I don't want to be a celebrity. I just want to live my life and do my thing and get to know these creatures better. I'm hoping, and in my lifetime before I die, that maybe we can actually make contact with them. I know it's a wild dream, but you never know. They trust me. I go to the same areas in the McCall area, where I've had experiences, and I return, and they know my, blonde hair. They know my music. I play, indigenous music, which is relaxing. And I have, just different things that capture their attention, I guess, because they will come and they will watch me. I may not see them fully, but I can see their silhouettes, in the trees and hear them. They've never threatened me.
So it sounds like your approach might be similar to Tom's itself, where you go to a certain area and you kind of just sit down in a chair and then just kind of chill out for a little bit.
Yeah, like a day camp. My lawn chair, and put on some music and just, come into their home, because it is their home that you're going into. You need to be respectful of their home and of them. And that draws them, of course, closer to you. They come to you. I don't have to run all over the mountains like they do in the Expedition Bigfoot or, those other shows. I don't have fancy equipment. I just want them to learn to trust me and that they can be at ease when I'm around.
If there's a person that is wanting to try something like this for the first time, what are the steps you would recommend that they do?
I would say just approach the area in a non-threatening manner. Do not roll in there with a truck full of rednecks and beer and guns. No, and loud music. Gosh, I don't run them off. So you just, drive in, and my little car, I have a Dodge Charger, and just drive in there and just set my lawn chair up and my little portable stereo and play my music and have a picnic lunch. And there's been times I've come, at the end of my day and time to come back home, and I'll find a little rock on the back spoiler of my Charger or something, a twig. Or I think the first thing I found was a leaf or something. It was a leaf. And I just thought it fell out of the tree. But then when they returned another time with a leaf, they put a rock on it so it wouldn't blow away. There was no one else around, just me and them. So it couldn't have been from a human.
Makes sense. When you go out, are you making a focus not to have electronics around you?
I do sometimes. I have a voice recorder, I can take with me. And of course, my video camera, if I feel I want to use it. But most of the time, I don't. No, I just, I want to earn their trust and know I'm not there to hurt them,
Absolutely. Are you ever verbally talking out loud to them during this time?
Yes, I do. And I also sing, and that seems to bring them in. So, just living life, enjoying their home for a moment. And then I, of course, clean up and make sure nothing's out of place when I leave. So
I think that's one of the most important things, is to make sure that, you clean up nature when you go there, and maybe even leave it better than when you first got there, if you can. which isn't really hard to do at all.
No.
If you
Oh,
just
gosh,
prepare
no.
ahead of time, bring a few garbage bags with you. Now, I've talked to a few people from northern Idaho, and it seems like northern Idaho has some really, really interesting things that happen.
Oh, yeah. It's very active. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just Bigfoot either. It just feels like there's some really interesting things that happen up there, but definitely the Bigfoot interactions that happen. There's mimicry. I talked to one lady where they were trying to get her to come into the woods by using someone's voice that she knew. And it's just, have you ever heard anything like that before?
I've heard the baby cry. It's unsettling. I mean, there's not a baby out there. You're the only one around. But when you hear that, you know that you're not alone, pretty much. And, a lot of people can't tell the difference, if they aren't experienced, haven't heard it before. And it's unnerving, I've never heard like the Sierra sounds, talking that they do or chattering.
So you're saying that you've actually heard that baby cry out in the woods?
Yes. Me and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and my ex-husband, we were out. They were going hunting. And this was in the afternoon. And I don't know, just with no warning, it was probably around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock maybe. Anyways, and my sister-in-law and I heard what sounded like a baby crying. That's the first time I had heard it. I've heard it a couple different times, but it's definitely not a baby. I mean, my sister-in-law, she was like, we got to go out there and look for this baby. And I said, it's not there.
Yeah, right.
Somebody wants us to come into the woods. And then when I explained that to her, she's like, I don't know if I want to go in there. Let's just stay here. So, yeah. I don't think they would mean us any harm. I really don't. But being females, they know that we would relate to a child, a baby, crying. I do believe that.
Absolutely. Deb, I wanted to say thank you for spending some time with me today. It's been a really interesting conversation. Did you have any closing thoughts or anything you might feel that's important for people that are getting into Bigfoot today to realize?
I just encourage people to read up on Bigfoot, watch videos, but make sure they're reliable sources because you can get a lot of bad information out there. Stuff I wouldn't recommend doing. Just approach the area in a non-threatening manner and think of it, okay? If they were to come into your home, would you want them to respect your home where you live and you and your family? That's how you should act out when you're in the woods with these people.
I think that makes perfect sense. And thank you so much for coming on today, Deb.
I appreciate it. It was fun.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. If you've had any encounters in Oregon, which I'm sure there's probably a few of you out there, please feel free to reach out immediately. You can use email bigfootsociety@gmail.com. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.